Representing His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, the personal representative of His Majesty the King, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, participated alongside Their Majesties, Their Highnesses, Kings, Princes, the heads of Arab and Islamic countries in the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit held in Doha to address the Israeli attack on Qatar. Upon the arrival of His Majesty's representative at the summit, he was received by the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who welcomed His Highness's participation in the summit. On the occasion, His Majesty the King addressed the summit, in which he expressed Bahrain's appreciation to Qatar for taking the initiative to hold this emergency Arab Islamic Summit and for the warm welcome, generous hospitality and excellent preparation and organisation. His Majesty stated that Bahrain has condemned Israel's attack on Doha, which constitutes a violation of Qatar's sovereignty, security and stability, as well as international law and the UN Charter. His Majesty the King extended condolences to Qatar's Emir, government and people for the martyrs of the Eternal Security Force who died in the line of duty, praying to Allah the Almighty to grant them eternal paradise and the wounded a speedy recovery. His Majesty stated that this aggression poses a serious threat to regional stability and undermines peace efforts, especially in light of the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip, adding that Qatar, together with Egypt and the US, has been working tirelessly to achieve a permanent ceasefire and secure the release of hostages and detainees. His Majesty the King said that Arab and Islamic countries are called upon to stand in solidarity with Qatar and to urge the international community to fulfil its responsibility towards ending the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in accordance with the rules of international law and the UN Charter. His Majesty reiterated Bahrain's firm position, calling for an immediate end to the war, the protection of civilians, the prevention of the displacement, the swift release of hostages and detainees, and the uninterrupted delivery of humanitarian and relief aid to the people of Gaza. His Majesty affirmed that the Palestinian cause remains central to resolving the conflict in the Middle East, requiring direct negotiations leading to a just settlement and establishment of an independent and viable Palestinian state alongside Israel, as stipulated in the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative. His Majesty highlighted that Bahrain welcomes the adoption by the UN General Assembly of the New York Declaration for a peaceful resolution of the Palestinian cause and the implementation of the two-state solution. This resolution represents international recognition of the right of the brotherly Palestinian people to self-determination and the establishment of their independent state. His Majesty commended the ongoing efforts of Saudi Arabia in partnership with France and expressed hope that joint efforts will ease tensions and promote peace in the region, allowing all its peoples to live in security, peace, stability and prosperity. His Majesty the King affirmed the commitment to peace, which is a fundamental and unwavering approach for the future of generations, and the values of tolerance, coexistence and fraternity, and preserving human dignity, freedom and the right to a dignified life. His Majesty prayed to Allah the Almighty to protect the nation and defend its rights and achievements, thereby ensuring security, stability and sovereignty. Representing His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, the personal representative of His Majesty the King, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, participated in the extraordinary session of the Supreme Council of the GCC held in the Qatari capital, Doha, under the chairmanship of the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The personal representative of His Majesty the King, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, and the accompanying delegation has returned to Bahrain after participating on behalf of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa in the extraordinary session of the Supreme Council of the GCC and the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit, which were held in Qatari capital Doha. Representing His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, the personal representative of His Majesty the King, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, and the accompanying delegation has arrived in Qatar to lead Bahrain's delegation at the extraordinary session of the Supreme Council of the GCC and the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit to address the Israeli attack in Qatar. Upon his arrival, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad was received by the Qatari Minister of Culture, Sheikh Abdul Rahman bin Hamad bin Jazim bin Hamad Al Thani, and Ambassador of Bahrain to Qatar, Mohammed bin Ali Al Ghatham. The Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, opened the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit in Doha to discuss the response to last week's unprecedented Israeli attack in Qatar, which resulted in the death of 6 people, including a Qatari citizen, and the injuring 18 others. In his opening speech, His Highness affirmed that his country is determined to take all necessary measures to preserve Qatar's security, stability and sovereignty in the face of the Israeli aggression. He affirmed that Qatar has always exerted efforts to end the war on Gaza and stressed that the country will continue its mediation efforts to achieve a ceasefire, release detainees and achieve peace in the region. The Crown Prince of Kuwait, His Highness Sheikh Sabah Khalid Al Hamad Al Subah, affirmed that the security of the state of Qatar is a fundamental pillar of the Arab and Islamic nations, noting that Israel's aggression against Qatari sovereignty constitutes a clear threat to regional and international security. His Highness added that this direct undermining of international efforts to establish peace in the region and a blatant disregard for the international system, its principles and international law. His Highness renewed the call on the international community and the Security Council to assume their responsibilities and not to remain silent or overlook this aggression. The Omani Deputy Prime Minister for Defence Affairs, His Highness Shihab bin Tariq bin Tamir Al Saeed, affirmed that the UN must take action to hold Israel accountable for its crimes. His Highness stressed that Oman condemns the aggression and fully stands in solidarity with the leadership and people of Qatar, reiterating that the security of Qatar is integral to the security of the Gulf, the Arab world and the Islamic nation. His Highness emphasised that the duty goes beyond condemnation and requires concrete legal and diplomatic steps, urging the UN, the Security Council and the General Assembly to utilise international law to hold Israel accountable for its crimes and violations and to work together to stop actions that threaten international peace and security. In a speech at the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit, His Majesty King Abdullah II Ibn Al Hussein of Jordan affirmed his country's support for Qatar and any step taken to counter the attack against it. In His Majesty's speech, he condemned the Israeli aggression as a blatant violation of international law and a dangerous escalation that pushes the region towards further conflict. He affirmed that the safety and security of Qatar is that of the Arab countries. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expressed his country's condemnation of the Israeli attack on the security and sovereignty of Qatar, which plays a pivotal role in mediation efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and end the unprecedented war and suffering endured by the Palestinians. In his speech, el-Sisi said that Qatar will have the full cooperation and coordination in facing the Israeli aggression, which constitutes a serious violation of international law and the UN Charter and is a dangerous threat to Arab and Islamic national security. El-Sisi expressed his condemnation of this Israeli aggression on the sovereignty and security of an Arab state. The Secretary-General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul-Gheit, emphasised that the Israeli aggression against Qatari sovereignty has exceeded all limits, explaining that remaining silent in the violation of the law undermines the entire international order and transgressed every human principle and civilised customs that humanity has agreed upon for ages, not to interfere with mediators or target commissioners. The summit also carries a message to the international community. Silence in the face of crimes is in fact a crime, and silence in the face of violations of the rules fuels the entire international system. The Secretary-General of the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, Dr. Hussein Taha, reiterated the organisation's condemnation of the attack on the security and safety of Qatar, calling the international community, particularly the UN Security Council, to hold Israel accountable for all crimes committed against the Palestinian people. The organisation noted that the Israeli attack on Qatar violates international law and the UN Charter. It expressed support for Qatar's efforts to preserve its sovereignty, noting that the attack is an extension of the crimes of Israel against the Palestinian people, their land and holy sites. The organisation urged the implementation of Security Council resolutions, including a ceasefire, adequate humanitarian aid, withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces, and enabling the Palestinian government to assume its responsibilities in Gaza. The Emergency Arab Islamic Summit has issued its concluding statement. It called upon all countries to take all possible legal and effective measures to prevent Israel from continuing its actions against the Palestinian people, to review diplomatic and economic relations with it, and to initiate legal proceedings against it. The statement condemned Israel's illegal attack on a residential neighbourhood in Doha, affirming absolute solidarity with Qatar against this attack, which represents an aggression against all Arab and Islamic countries. It affirms standing with Qatar in all steps it takes to protect its security, sovereignty, stability and the safety of its citizens and residents. It praised the civilised, wise and responsible position taken by Qatar in dealing with the attack, its unwavering commitment to international law and its determination to preserve its sovereignty and security and defend its rights by all legitimate means. It also called for supporting the efforts of countries acting as mediators to stop the aggression against the Gaza Strip. The statement rejected Israel's repeated threats to potentially target Qatar again or any Arab or Islamic country, considering them a provocation and a dangerous escalation that threatens international peace and security. The statement welcomed the Arab League's issuance of their resolution, Joint Vision for Security and Cooperation in the region, and emphasised the concept of collective security, the common destiny of Arab and Islamic countries, and the need to unite and confront common challenges and threats. It condemned any Israeli attempts to displace the Palestinian people, considering this a flagrant violation of international law and international humanitarian law. The statement welcomed the UN General Assembly's adoption of the New York Declaration on the implementation of the two-state solution and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. It welcomed the convening of the two-state solution conference co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France, and called for concerted international efforts to ensure broad recognition of the independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. The statement tasked the member states of the OIC to take all possible measures to support the implementation of the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court against perpetrators of crimes against the Palestinian people. The GCC Supreme Council strongly condemned the Israeli attack and blatant violation of Qatar's sovereignty, calling it a dangerous escalation and a grave breach of international law and the UN Charter. In its concluding statement, issued after the extraordinary session held on the sidelines of the Arab Islamic Summit, the Council expressed full solidarity with Qatar in all measures it takes to confront this aggression. It stressed that the security of GCC states is indivisible, and any attack on one is an attack on all, under the GCC Charter and the Joint Defence Agreement, affirming readiness to mobilise all resources to support Qatar's security, stability and sovereignty. The GCC leaders instructed the GCC Joint Defence Council to convene urgently in Doha, preceded by a meeting of the Military Committee to assess defence readiness and threats in light of the Israeli aggression, and to direct the Unified Military Command to activate joint defence mechanisms and deterrent capabilities. The Council warned that this Israeli attack poses a direct threat to collective Gulf security and regional stability, adding that continued aggression undermines peace efforts and existing agreements with Israel, with serious repercussions for the region. The Deputy Prime Minister, Sheikh Khalid bin Abdullah Al Khalifa, chaired the weekly Cabinet meeting at Gudaibiya Palace. The Cabinet highlighted the importance of the meeting held between His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa with the UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, which aims to further strengthen relations and bilateral cooperation to serve common aspirations. The Cabinet noted that the visit of the UAE President to Bahrain reaffirmed a shared commitment to further enhance coordination between the two countries, particularly following recent regional developments. Marking the International Day of Peace, the Cabinet affirmed His Majesty the King's commitment to advancing pioneering initiatives that encourage peace and coexistence, thereby reinforcing security and stability and supporting development and prosperity. The Cabinet reviewed the latest regional and international developments and welcomed the convening of the Emergency Arab-Islamic Summit hosted by Qatar regarding the recent Israeli aggression against Qatar. A delegation from Bahrain, led by the personal representative of His Majesty the King, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, have participated in the summit. The Cabinet expressed its best wishes for the leaders of the Arab and Islamic countries in achieving outcomes and decisions that strengthen Arab and Islamic solidarity and promote regional security and stability. The Cabinet condemned the Israeli attack on Qatar, considering it a violation of Qatari national sovereignty and the principles of international law. It reiterated Bahrain's full solidarity with Qatar in the measures taken to protect its security, sovereignty and the safety of its citizens and residents. The Cabinet also expressed its condolences to Qatar's leadership, government and people over the death of a member of the Internal Security Force as a result of the blatant Israeli attack on Doha. The Cabinet welcomed the launch of the Arab shipbuilding and repair yard Asri Solar Energy Project, the largest of its kind in the world in the marine repair and construction sector, in cooperation with Canary Clean Max Renewables, which was attended by the representative of His Majesty the King for Humanitarian Work and Youth Affairs and Chairman of Bapco Energies, His Highness Sheikh Nasser bin Hamad Al Khalifa. The Cabinet affirmed that this project reflects the company's commitment to supporting environmental initiatives. It also commended the success of the second Global Water, Energy and Climate Change Congress, recently hosted by Bahrain, noting the high levels of attendance and participation. The Cabinet stressed that such events reaffirm the Kingdom's commitment to supporting international efforts aimed at advancing the sustainability of water resources. The Cabinet wished success to the doctors who will be taking the Bahraini board examinations, which are being held for the first time since the Bahrain Council for Health Studies and Specialities obtained institutional accreditation from the Arab Board of Health Specialities. The meeting welcomed the UNGA's adoption of a resolution endorsing the New York Declaration regarding a two-state solution for Palestine, which affirms the international community's desire for a future of security and stability. The Cabinet commended the efforts of Saudi Arabia and France that contributed to the issuance of the declaration and its adoption by the UN General Assembly. The Cabinet then approved the following memorandums. A memorandum submitted by the Civil Service Council on restructuring several government agencies to enhance performance and operational efficiency. A memorandum submitted by the Ministerial Committee for Legal and Legislative Affairs and the Government's response to several draft laws and motions submitted by the Council of Representatives and draft laws submitted by the Shura Council. The Cabinet then noted the outcomes of the following ministerial reports. The official visit of the Minister of Interior to Pakistan, the Kingdom's participation in the 165th session of the GCC Ministerial Council and the second joint ministerial meeting of strategic dialogue between the GCC and Japan. The Kingdom's participation in the 164th ordinary session of the Council of the League of Arab States at the level of foreign ministers. The visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the UAE. The official visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs to Japan to participate in the first strategic dialogue between Bahrain and Japan. The Kingdom's participation in the 8th joint ministerial meeting of the strategic dialogue between the GCC and Russia. The Kingdom's participation in the Gulf Green Mobility Forum. The Kingdom's participation in the second Sustainable Maritime Industry Conference. the Kingdom's participation in the 11th meeting of the Committee of Labour Ministers of the GCC countries, the official visit of the Minister of Cabinet Affairs and the Minister of Information to the UAE, the official visit of the Minister of Housing and Urban Planning to Jordan, the official visit of the Minister of Youth Affairs to Italy, the Kingdom's participation in the 11th meeting of the Committee of Ministers of Social Affairs and Development of GCC countries, marking the International Day for the Preservation of the Ozone Layer, the personal representative of His Majesty the King and Chairman of the Supreme Council for Environment, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa, stressed that closer local and international cooperation, greater public awareness and scientific innovation are key to strengthening environmental responsibility and ensuring a safe, healthy future for generations to come. This year's observance coincides with the 30th anniversary of the Montreal Protocol on Substances and Deplete the Ozone Layer, held under the theme From Scientific Knowledge to Global Action, and the 40th anniversary of the Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer. His Highness affirmed Bahrain's commitment to consolidating its leading roles in environmental protection and the preservation of natural resources. He said these efforts are guided by the Kingdom's vision of building a sustainable society, resilient to global challenges and anchored in international environmental standards and the Sustainable Development Goals. His Highness noted that Bahrain continues to align its national policies with global environmental commitments, citing the issuance of Decree 33 of 2024, ratifying the Montreal Protocol and its subsequent amendments, up to the Kigali Amendments of 2006. He said this step underscores the Kingdom's determination to balance sustainable development with the protection of human health and the environment. His Highness added that the Council is pressing ahead with a comprehensive plan to 2030 aimed at phasing out ozone-depleting substances entirely. This includes advancing sustainable practices in the cooling and air conditioning sectors, strengthening technical capacity and adopting international best practices in the management of refrigerants and cooling systems. The meeting of the Standing Committee on Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development of the Asian Parliamentary Assembly, the APA, was held in Bahrain in the presence of the Shura Council Chairman, Ali Al-Saleh, Shura and Representative Council's members, the heads of delegations of member parliaments of the Asian Parliamentary Assembly, the Secretary-General of the Representatives Council, the Secretary of the Executive Committee of the Parliamentary Division, Engineer Mohammed Al-Bouenin. The Speaker of the Representatives Council, Ahmed Al-Musalem, and Chairman of the Executive Committee of the Parliamentary Division, affirmed that Bahrain, under the leadership of His Majesty the King and with the support and follow-up of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, places at the forefront of its foreign and diplomatic policy the pursuit of regional rapprochement and strengthening the role of Asian parliamentary action with the aim of developing cooperation. During his speech, Al-Musalem called on the APA to launch and inaugurate a parliamentary project and an institutional human rights initiative that support human rights and establish a culture of rights in Asian countries. He emphasised the importance of supporting Asian cooperation, strengthening parliamentary dialogue, developing mechanisms for cooperation between Asian parliaments and consolidating relations between Asian countries. He noted that Asian cooperation in economy and investment has become an urgent need and a necessity in light of global transformations and challenges. On the occasion of International Democracy Day, the Speaker of the Representatives Council, Ahmed Al-Musalem, affirmed that the royal patronage of His Majesty the King for democratic work has strengthened the role of constitutional institutions and national participation in supporting the comprehensive development process. He praised the efforts of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister in consolidating national action through quality projects, initiatives and programmes in line with the royal aspirations. He pointed to Bahrain's active popular participation, freedom of opinion, responsible expression, the exercise of the legislative authority's constitutional powers and the strengthening of the independence of the judiciary. On the occasion of International Democracy Day, the Chairman of the Shura Council, Ali Al-Saleh, affirmed that the insightful vision of His Majesty the King have achieved qualitative and pioneering accomplishments in the march of reform and modernisation. He pointed out that Bahrain's National March has become a model to be emulated at the regional and global levels in establishing a state of institutions and law, strengthening parliamentary life and expanding political participation within a framework of freedom, justice and equality. He expressed thanks and appreciation to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister for his continuous efforts in supporting national initiatives aimed at consolidating a national action. On the International Day of Democracy, Bahrain continues to consolidate the values of popular participation and institutional work during the prosperous era of His Majesty the King. More in this report.
The International Day of Democracy is an annual occasion that emphasizes the importance of partnership between the state and society in shaping development and the future. Bahrain stands out as a leading example that has been able to translate these principles into reality under the prosperous era of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. The comprehensive reform project and the royal vision have been a pivotal turning point in the modern history of the kingdom, where Bahrain has paid special attention to promoting popular participation, establishing the principles of justice and equality, and supporting national institutions that guarantee rights and duties in line with the National Action Charter. Through this approach, the kingdom has succeeded in building a balanced model that combines economic and social development based on authentic Bahraini values while remaining open to international experiences. Bahrain also continues to be an active participant in international forums, highlighting its national achievements in the areas of sustainable development, women's and youth empowerment, and the protection of rights and freedoms, thereby strengthening its regional and international standing as a model for development and progress. Bahrain's celebration of this global occasion reflects its unwavering commitment to continuing the march of progress and construction in line with the royal vision and with the participation of all citizens.
For more on the International Day of Democracy, we have the member of the Shura Council and the Foreign Affairs, Defence and National Security Committee and the Human Rights Committee, Nancy Kaderi, who gave us this statement.
So this democratic march is highlighted by several notable achievements, the most prominent of which are the adoption of the National Action Charter, which was the main turning point in the consolidation of democratic reform. Secondly, we have the legislative authority with a bicameral system that reflects the balance and integration between expertise and popular representation, which enables the drafting of qualitative legislation that, of course, supports further development. We also have the participation of women and youth in public life, including representation in parliament and executive positions within the framework of comprehensive national empowerment and advancement. We also witness the strengthening of the human rights system through effective national institutions and developing legislation in accordance with international standards. And of course, the active Bahraini presence in regional and international parliamentary forums continues to reflect the global appreciation of the Bahraini democratic practice. The legislative authority in the Kingdom of Bahrain makes continuous and integrated efforts through several ways. The most prominent of these efforts are enacting modern legislation whereby the Shura Council, Consultative Council, and the Council of Representatives review draft laws, propose draft laws, reject laws, approve laws that support the economic, social, and service sectors, and that are in line with Bahrain's economic vision of 2030. Today, we all witness digital transformation. So, with respect to legislative work, it helps to speed up procedures, provide more efficient parliamentary services, facilitate access to information, etc. Also by building specialized national cadres through the development of human resources in the respective general secretariats of each chamber, and by benefiting from legal and technical expertise to support the work of members and their respective committees.
The Minister of Finance and National Economy, Sheikh Salman bin Khalifa Al Khalifa, met with the Minister for External Relations of the Bailiwick of Jersey, Senator Ian Gost. Sheikh Salman bin Khalifa reviewed relations between both sides, particularly in the financial and economic domains, highlighting the importance of advancing progress to further develop cooperation for the benefit of both countries. The minister emphasised the long-standing cooperation between Bahrain and Jersey, noting the shared commitment to developing bilateral ties and advancing them. An agreement on the elimination of double taxation and the prevention of tax evasion and avoidance was signed by Sheikh Salman bin Khalifa on behalf of Bahrain and by Senator Gorst on behalf of Jersey. The finance minister said the agreement is an important step towards enhancing economic investment and trade partnership between the two countries and expanding its scope. He highlighted the important role of such agreements in promoting economic progress and facilitating attractive investment opportunities. The double taxation agreement aims to further develop economic relations and cooperation between the Kingdom and Jersey to achieve shared aspirations. The Minister of Transportation and Telecommunications and Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the King Hamad Global Centre for Coexistence and Tolerance, Dr. Sheikh Abdullah bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, emphasised the Centre's commitment to continuing its educational programmes to empower youth and to spread the culture of peace, dialogue and understanding among peoples, in line with the humanitarian vision of His Majesty the King. On the occasion of launching the second edition of the joint postgraduate diploma on coexistence, he expressed pride in the constructive cooperation between the Centre, the United Nations affiliated University for Peace and the Gaia Higher Education Institute in Malta. The programme focuses on topics of peace, human rights, international law and combating extremism and hatred, with 100 students from 63 countries following the success of the first edition, which received broad international and UN recognition. He added that this programme comes as part of the Centre's educational initiatives in cooperation with international partners. It embodies the royal vision and the directives of the government, led by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, to further advance the role of education as a fundamental pillar for embedding coexistence and tolerance, building bridges of religious and cultural dialogue. The Minister welcomed the participating students, urging them to engage openly with the programme and to benefit from its updated courses, which combine academic theory with practical applications, delivered through virtual platforms and field activities. The Board of Directors of the Bahrain Tourism and Exhibitions Authority, BTEA, held its regular meeting, chaired by the Minister of Tourism and BTEA Board Chairperson, Fatim Al-Sarafi, in the presence of the CEO of BTEA, Sarah Bahiji. The board reviewed the performance of Bahrain's tourism sector for the third quarter of 2025. They evaluated progress against the National Tourism Strategy 2022 to 2026, which aims to boost tourism's contribution to the national economy, elevated Bahrain's status as a global destination. The meeting discussed marketing plans for 6 priority markets, covering the GCC states, India, the UK, Germany, China, and the recently added a French market, identified as a high potential source of visitors through recent data analysis. The board also discussed upcoming campaigns, including the Brighton to Buy Your Presents initiative launched for Saudi National Day and preparations for Bahrain's 2025 holiday season. The Minister of Education, Dr. Mohammed Juma, approved licensing decisions for several private educational institutions, reflecting the Ministry's commitment to supporting private sector investment in education. The Minister emphasised that expanding educational institutions in both the public and private sectors is an essential pillar for providing high-quality education. He noted that this expansion offers a variety of educational options suitable for students and parents. He added that the Ministry continues to regulate private education and support investment in line with approved policies that prioritise quality education and the promotion of the Bahraini identity by reinforcing national values and principles.